Looks like we're ready to roll. And welcome back for another fan battle. And I'm your host, Coach Robert. So today we have Atharv against Vedanta. And they're going to make the move as soon as they see the stream is live. I've been calling these a grudge match, but honestly, Atharv, whose username is optimizationguy, didn't actually do anything. And if I had to say there's any quarrel against Vedanta, it's just that he talks a lot. So it's not really much of a grudge match, but more of an excuse for us to play two 10-minute games, and then two 5-minute games, and in the event of a 2-2 tie, we play an Armageddon 3-minute game. So that's what's going to happen as soon as the players are ready. I'm just confirming with them in Discord, and then we're off to the races. As usual, I was too slow to get all my basics done, so I'm going to be drinking coffee here. Too weak, too slow. That's what they say. Alright, so we have the first move. Vedanta is taking the white pieces first against the Atharv. Looks like the clock is not syncing. That happened last time too. It's annoying. Okay, hopefully it'll behave now. So you can see the players. Vedanta is weighing in at 1987 rating in the rapid portion against 1895. So it's a pretty tight mashup. It's barely like 100 points in this time control. We might see a greater disparity in the blitz, but honestly, rating's just a number, sort of like age. Although, of course, in some contexts, you have to heed these kinds of things. So take it with a grain of salt. Age and rating. Now, we're looking at a, what's it called? For some reason I'm thinking Vienna, but it's not. It's like a closed Sicilian. And there's a lot of flexible setups here for white. I guess you could say the same thing for black. But a good general piece of wisdom is when you reach a position like this, whatever kind of Sicilian you would normally play against knight f3, you should play the same kind of setup for the first couple moves against knight c3, since it often transposes. We might even see, well, here he's already played f4, so I don't think we're going to see any transpositions now. It's kind of a true blue closed Sicilian. I like how they're taking their time in the opening. I mean, it's not like they're taking forever, but they're not blitzing it out. It's good. It's better to invest time early before you get into a precarious position and have to burn a minute on the clock to survive. So black is adopting a very flexible, but maybe not that ambitious setup. Not that it's bad or anything, but since d6 is played, it's basically like saying they're not trying to break with d5 very quickly, which is a normal idea in the Sicilian. But I probably would play the exact same kind of thing. But e6 is also saying I don't want to play e5 anytime. We'll see what they're up to as things develop. I should probably be looking at the chat. Something went wrong. Oh, of course. Something always goes wrong. Hearing my voice. I don't like that. Alright. So, of course, people can guess the moves and give their input and questions as we go. I'm trying to learn here. So, I'm happy to share my opinion. We can discuss everything. So we could have gotten a position a lot like this, but with the knight on d7 instead. So we might see some kind of subtle differences here. With the knight on c6, it's more directly combating the d4 break, and I think it's maybe a better idea. One idea in this opening for white is to just play d4 and sacrifice the pawn completely for some initiative. But in this case, it wouldn't be a sacrifice because after pawn takes, they'd kind of have to take back with the knight since their own knight is hanging. So, but d3 is foregoing these active possibilities. Seems like both players are just trying to like move all their pieces once and then decide what to do later on. Okay, so optimization guy Atharv has gone for castling. It took him a long time to decide, though. He now actually has something of a time deficit. In 10-minute, a 1-minute lead can be pretty substantial. But I also think that, the position is solid for both players. Development's almost complete. I think white might have some small problems completing development because they invested time to play f4, but as compensation they have a little bit more center control, a little more space. So we'll see what the players make of it. Opening's not over yet. Someone asked me like yesterday, how do you know when the opening's over? I don't think that it makes sense to have a hard, fast rule like if you've played 26 moves, opening is over. You're not allowed to play opening anymore after move 26. I don't think any kind of rules like that are very useful. I think it's just like when your preparation is over, or when the more like preparatory moves are kind of diminishing in frequency, then we're kind of out of the opening. If you're playing in a very serious way, it's basically when your preparation is over. That's when the opening's over for you. Alright, so is it possible that black is coming in clutch with the d5 break? This d5 move is pretty typical. I was even mentioning it earlier. And in this case, it even comes with gain of time because the bishop was on c4. The reason that you often want to play d5 is because it simultaneously challenges the center. It's fighting this pawn on e4. And it's also increasing the scope of your other pieces when you advance the d-pawn. It's still kind of unclear, I guess, where this bishop on c8 belongs. It's pretty intuitive to want to move this piece next, though, because it's in the way of the other more heavyweight pieces like the rooks. And of course, we'd like to attack on the light squares, perhaps. So it has to get involved somehow, but it's not clear which way we want to go. Like, do we want to go on this way or this way? Or maybe some more complex maneuvering. Again, I have to apologize for eating in front of people, but it's one of those nights. If I remember correctly, Atharv, who's playing black, has just completed his PhD. And maybe his username optimizationguy is an allusion to maybe the methods that he used. But I also have to admit, he told me like 6 months ago what his thesis was, and I've already forgotten. So can neither confirm nor deny. A6 seems like a pretty transparent bid to gain some space. It's attacking the b5 square, and it doesn't seem like white necessarily wanted to go on b5, although it could be useful somehow. But now it's not possible for white to put a piece on b5, and it's possible for black to take over that square even more. So a4 is not an unexpected move from Vedanta. He wants to challenge for the b5 square. Makes a lot of sense. But somehow, like, white's development feels pretty slow. He's like making a bunch of pawn moves. He's moving the queen, but he's moving the bishop more than once. This is an interesting decision. B4, some people would call it an outpost square, although it's not a true outpost, because while it's difficult to challenge the knight since a4's been played, it's possible long-term to kick it out with c3, because the knight would be hanging at that point. But of course, white has to do a lot of preparation for that. Like, they'd have to move the knight, which could be inconvenient. They'd have to protect the squares that are attacked by the knight, so that the knight can't advance further into white's territory, things like that. So, it's not a true outpost, but it could be pretty annoying for a knight to hang out there long-term. But still, like, both players are not quite developing the pieces, which is perplexing. I don't know, I like to develop my pieces. Okay, so finally some forcing play, and the pawn structure is kind of crystallizing. This pawn on e5 is attacking the knight, and it can't advance any further because it's blocked by the pawn on e6. So this could become a long-term feature in the position, unless some really dynamic stuff comes up next. I can't help but wonder if perhaps black missed the boat. I think there was a critical option for black like a second ago. But since the game is still tense, I'll just bring it up in the postmortem. It was an idea involving preventing e5. It might really be nothing as well. So let's see. What's white up to now? Back to their old tricks. Some very interesting dynamic possibilities for both sides here. Oh, he like practically pre-moved c4. That's ridiculous. Wow. Maybe it's early morning for Atharv, because that's a huge blunder. It's practically game over at this point. I mean, I think so. I don't see any compensation here. But still, could be a fight. Maybe also he was feeling the time pressure. Like, opening's barely even complete, and we're down to less than 3 minutes. It's pretty tough. Now, if I may speculate as to the psychology here, I'm pretty sure that on this move he was expecting either bishop takes c4 or bishop a2. I think he missed the possibility of bishop a4 and didn't wait to see what would happen. which is pretty unfortunate because I think he constructed a pretty fair position as black, although he does have a lot less space. Knight f8 is a very sensible move. Some people might feel uncomfortable putting the knight back, but Steinitz says if you have a knight on f8, you're not going to get checkmated on h7. It makes a lot of sense. Now, finally, this bishop is coming into play, and I think it's pretty transparent where it's going. This outpost square. Common problem, actually, in the knight or Sicilian. Like, when white plays a4, a5, and you have a6 played already from move 6, eventually a white piece could come to live on b6. And some of the play in that whole opening system is surrounding that concept. Although it's not exactly like that. That's a, should I say, a panacea for white. Generally, it's quite difficult to accomplish. But here, I mean, being up a piece, it's pretty easy to fly in on b6 now. I feel like there's a lot of pre-moving going on in this 10 plus 0. Like, people are just going so fast. All of a sudden. It's kind of telling that the fastest move played was also the most disastrous move played. Generally, playing very quickly is not advantageous. Even in time pressure, you have to just kind of like learn to mitigate the unfavorable circumstance and play good moves quickly. But of course, that's asking a lot. It's just usually it's better to invest time early on to avoid these problems, but in the critical moments, it's good to slow down too. Like, you can identify that this moment was critical because, like, black just sacrificed a pawn on c4. So, of course, things are critical. Generally, if I'm going to sacrifice something, I'll slow down at least a little bit just ahead of the next move. Because I have this tendency to calculate everything to the end ahead of time, and then I just play all the moves that I calculated, but if I visualize something wrong in the middle, I just play it and then I lose and I get sad. So I don't want to be sad, so I slow down. Okay, now that we're arriving in time trouble land, also known as move territory, anything could actually happen, even though, like, black's down a piece. The fact that white hasn't won yet kind of made me wonder for a second if I was correct in saying that they were down a piece, so I quickly did a recount. I just feel like by now, white should have something, but they're, like, putting the bishop on b6, then putting it back. This is how you can, like, really slip and fall in time pressure with these kinds of, like, do-nothing moves. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Bishop b4 is a good move. I think so, anyway. Of course, if you're down a piece, it's hard to, like, praise moves too highly. But, you know, in a relative sense, it's good. Okay, very quick prophylaxis. I probably would have allowed white to play knight g5. I think h6 is a little bit of a telling move. Atharv's playing well in the time pressure, I'd say. Like, good defending moves here. Just saying, like, I'm not going to trade pieces, I'm not going to get checkmated, and see what happens as the clock ticks down. Pawn takes is very committal, but it does open the f-file. See, white's king is suddenly kind of under attack. I'd be mildly concerned. Because black's king is safer, but they're down a piece. Good call. Rook takes d4 was the threat. The knight was pinned, so it couldn't take back. Rook d3. That's a lot of pressure. I don't think it should be like cracking pressure though. Something's up here. I thought Harry was gonna come crashing through with h5, but I guess that's just provoking black to play knight e7, which is pretty useful anyway. If I had to guess a move with 14 seconds on the clock for black, I'd say it's rook e d8. Yep. And if they trade, black could get a passed pawn, or they could activate their rook further. I think that black has a lot to hope for with both players with only 10 seconds on the clock. Ooh, lots of blunders here. Pretty sure knight d4 was a pre-move. Knight on c3 is hanging. Is he going to take it? Like, he's got 5 seconds left. Takes a pawn instead. What is this? Am I missing something? Oh, 2 pawns. Crazy. Just time pressure problems. Like, whoever plays fast loses or wins or something. I don't know. Who even won this game? White timed out. Crazy. So Atharv was down to 0.06 seconds. What a save. Hello Vikyat, welcome to the chat. Okay, so I just want to see if they started the second game. I think they did not yet. Probably Vedanta is still screaming in his house from losing on time up a piece by 0.06 seconds. Hold on, I'm gonna just quickly navigate and see if they started another game. Nope, not yet. Yep, Vedant's screaming in the chat. I would too, probably. Okay, so they're taking just a quick break, looks like. I guess it was a harrowing escape, so it's better not to play the opening under such circumstances. So if I may offer a little bit of analysis while the players are working on it. So going back after Blunderville happened. So I think d5 was quite sensible. I'm not sure how I feel about including a6 and a4, but let's just suppose that we do. Okay. The idea that I had was to play e5 in that position, but it looks like the players are starting, so I'll can it for now. All right, so Vedanta now has black against Atharv. And it's another e4. Sorry guys, messaging players. Okay, so now we're having another Sicilian discussion. And this time it's this, I don't know if it's Taimanov or Khan Paulson, it's like similar stuff. There's a lot of move order subtlety here, and I think this is one of black's more dynamic options. E6 puts this bishop away for a long time, but often this bishop gets really powerful, like in the, what's it called? Like in the Arkhangelsk variation of the Spanish, where the bishop also comes on c5. Except here, it can't ever be stunted by the move d4, so it's pretty logical to play in this fashion. What's the name of this variation? Where white gets a knight on d6 and everything's blocked. I think it's called the Lowenthal Sicilian. I remember I played a very close game with someone in New Jersey Open. And I like refuted his opening play, but I blundered later on and lost. And he was telling me after the game, like, it's called the Lowenthal. And just the way he said it is, like, drilled into my head. Like, him telling me as if I didn't know the opening. Just because I lost the game. I was like really not happy with him. But yeah, this idea of a king e7 looks maybe stupid, but it's hard for white to maintain control of the d6 square after king e7. So it's pretty sensible. I had an interesting game against. Um, okay, I guess I don't know that many personal details about him. I just remember him kind of as like Red Bull guy. Because when I played him in World Open, he was like chugging Red Bull and being really belligerent. Um, but I played him in New York like a year later almost or something, and he played this variation, and I had the white pieces and gave him the smackdown. I think that if white plays really precisely, white just maintains an edge throughout, but it's quite hard. Like here, um, I mean, the knight's hanging, right? Bishop d6 is a thing, and maintaining it with additional support, for example, with bishop f4, could be met by moves like e5, which is like somewhat complex because moves like knight d5 come up on the menu. You could also like liquidate for the bishop, but then it's like black give up their castling only to get huge development. So it's risky business to throw the knight on d6 so quickly as well. I would probably have waited until I was forced to play knight d6 instead of doing it straight away. Yeah, and here we go. e5's on tap. That's certainly a problem. Like, knight takes c8 is probably forced. Knight f5 also looks pretty decent now that I see it. The knight's gonna get kicked a bunch of times, but it's probably still kosher. I think we might see another like quick d5 break from black, but only time will tell at this point. King f8 is probably the sensible move. I don't think it's the only move though, which is kind of interesting. Like the knight was attacking the king and the pawn, but protecting the pawn was not really necessary because the bishop on f4 is hanging. So there might have been some more diverse options here, but this is certainly the more sound way to play. I have to say I like black here, like considerably. I think waiting to be forced to play knight d6 is a little bit more prudent than just flying in. But maybe this is also theory and I just don't know. I mean, I've forgotten a lot of opening theory since I'm not playing chess all the time. Bishop g5 is very sensible. It's putting the kibosh on any knight takes e4 ideas. But the bishop also is a target on g5. So like all white's minor pieces are kind of targets, and I think black's pieces are pretty harmonious, except for the king on f8. So how will black handle it? So if they try a direct move like h6, right? Putting the question to the bishop is what they say, right? We could like move it away, or we could take, or we can move it away in a different way. Maybe it's a little unambiguous what white would do. I think if h6, they would just take on f6. Whenever you put the question to the bishop, it's good to figure out like what does your opponent really want to do. If you are just forcing them to do something that they want to do, then it's not worth it to play the forcing move. It's better to just improve your own position. I've often made that mistake by including a6. Like, I play a6 forcing a bishop to go somewhere good or something like that, and it just improves white's pieces. Now here, after d6, the knight is under fire. Not necessarily in a critical way, but it might become unpleasant for white to have to recapture with the pawn, because the pawn could become a target. It'll be doubled if there's a pawn on f5, and if the e-pawn moves, it's no longer controlling d5, which is arguably a more critical square than f5, since it's a center square. White would really like to, for example, drop a dog on d5, and having support of a pawn makes that more feasible. I don't know if you guys can tell, but the sun is like still rising here. It's a pretty low lit deck. Knight e3. This is a kind of maybe prudent maneuver, although it is time consuming. Like, what has this knight's total path been? It went for like g1 to f3 to d4 to b5 to d6 to f5 to e3. What a funny path. I mean, it's pretty sensible to arrive on e3. But there's probably been a more economical way to get a similar position to this one. So, hard to say if White's doing all right, but it is generally a pretty good idea to post up a knight on d5 with support from another knight. One of the issues, though, with this kind of strategy is that if you have two knights competing for one square, they're kind of working at a lower efficiency than normal, because they kind of both want to be here, but they can't both be there. So I think we might even see this knight heading for a different square, not necessarily d5. Of course, that's up to black too, since they could snap it off. But if they take it, they're going to be losing a really active bishop. And bishops generally have good potential in these open situations and long-term going into the endgame. So it might be too much to give it up just for a knight that has traveled many moons. So if I have to guess black's move, again, I would guess that they might complete their development by moving a bishop, but the players have surprised me thus far with how they want to develop their pieces, or rather how they just don't develop their pieces, so we'll see. For any returning subscribers, I gave an allusion in the Discord to a guest host, and today it didn't work out just because they're busy. It's Sunday, it's early in the morning, but I might arrange like a Friday stream, and you guys could meet an old friend of mine. They'll host, and we could all. I was gonna say something that's like not a very well-mannered phrase, but talk about chess. Maybe a special feature. I think the players heard me because they just both developed their bishops, which they didn't really do in the last game. So, good for them. Using the pieces that you're given is certainly a must. E2 is sort of a curious place, though, for this bishop. Like, it looks pretty natural because you're playing on both flanks, but you're also kind of waiting in the wings. It's not really making a stand for what's critical in the position. And I think that central to the struggle is the fight for this d5 outpost. It's a true outpost. Like in the last game, there was a knight on b4, and it wasn't a true outpost because they could get kicked with c3. Granted, black just blundered that knight, so it didn't really end up mattering. But in this game, the d5 square is a true outpost. There are no pawns that can chase it away. You might think that the higher value pieces are going to chase pieces out of d5, so like, why do we care? But that means that more valuable pieces are going to have to do babysitting duty on the d5 square long term. So it's pretty advantageous to always at least have the threat of occupying the outpost square. Now, for that reason, I think that bishop e2 is not necessarily that great because they could have played bishop c4, contesting the outpost square further. A lot of the time, you want to have like a total party on the outpost square. But I have a feeling that Atharv is who's playing white, by the way, was maybe very attached to the idea of putting this knight on d5, and so he didn't want to see an exchange and then the knight on c4, although I think that would have been a pretty nifty option, if I can use words like nifty with a straight face. So in this game, we're kind of seeing both players not castling so far. I mean, this is white's first opportunity to castle, right? And black lost their castling rights long ago. So the players have not really, should I say, prioritized castling in the opening. Atharv went on this massive knight tour, bringing the knight all the way to e3 from g1 in a path you would probably not guess if you didn't see the opening. And foregoing castling, consequently, because that was a very time-consuming process. And black got pretty good development by giving up their castling with king e7, which I think is maybe a dubious idea, but it has had fair results in practice. Although I don't think any really strong players are favoring this lately. I think this was the right moment for bishop f6 because it causes the most damage to black's pawn structure, but the caveat is that this rook could now get activated via the g file. It doesn't mean they will, but it's possible. And it was not even possible before. This is a pretty double-edged move, but again, Atharv is getting into like time pressureville. So I think he's starting to make some fast and loose decisions. This is a really tricky moment because, alright, so b5 is on the menu, but I feel that white has a fantastic resource here that I think both players have missed because it also existed like a second ago. In this position, bishop takes e3. Pawn takes e3 was not the only move that could have been played. So let's see if the players, yeah, queen d6. It's check, so even if the bishop was still on e3, they could have played this way. And I think the tide has just turned significantly. Because there's more than one option even for how to play here. Like, pieces for white and for black are hanging. Let's see what the players choose. I think this is a good decision because it forces black to invest some time to regain the lost piece. And yeah, there's a lot of pressure on f6 now with the short castling. This is one of the perks of playing pawn takes e3. Not only do you get a bishop for a knight, eliminating black's long-term potential somewhat, but you open the f-file for your rook. And activity is really, really important. In fact, like white could have snagged an extra pawn with queen b5. I'm not sure that was necessarily a good thing. Well, actually, it wouldn't be free. They would have to play bishop takes b5. It might have been a good option just because it came with gain of time, but it might also have been unnecessary complication. So, oh, this is interesting. He's doing everything in his power to get on f6. Oops, sorry. Did not mean to do too many arrows. But this position's kind of busy. I feel like this might be a little too optimistic. Objectively, it's a hanging piece. So I think black is probably examining alternatives to taking. The idea is that if bishop takes g4, then queen takes f6 check, leaves black with only a couple moves. But king f8 is clearly bad because the rook's hanging. So it would be only king g8. And then, worst case scenario, you could always pick up the bishop with queen g5 check, but there's also a mate in one in that position. Of course, after rook b6, it's hard to maintain contact with that weak f6 point. So I think it might have been an error on his part to play bishop g4. Unless there's some fantastic resource I'm not seeing, as usual. Chess is hard, so you never know. b3. That's an interesting choice. I guess he's trying to like snag a pawn for his trouble. Maybe just simplify the position somewhat. And the rook's gonna... Oh, white resigned. I don't think this position's resignable, especially with the time pressure situation, but okay. The last game was also pretty tight, so hard to say the score's not fair, I guess. Alright, so now we're going into the 5-minute portion. It's 1-1 coming out of the rapid 1-1. And it's another Sicilian, but a different Sicilian. Players are coming in hot because they have half the time, and it seems like their time management is not that great based on the 10-minute portion. I wonder if black is going to play the same e6, d6 pawn structure. We'll see. Right now it's... okay, I don't remember the name of this opening, but I think this is a pretty lackluster approach for white. It's just not very challenging. Black could even play e5. I think e5 is not that good because it gives up this d5 outpost like what we saw in the last game. But you know, white's not really taking a stand, and they're almost certainly going to exchange off a pair of bishops, which diminishes the long-term potential for having the bishop pair. So I think black can get away with a little bit more than normal here. They could like maybe press. But of course, going down a minute on the clock is not super advisable. If it's necessary, it's necessary, but it's tough. Tough to decide when to think and when not to think. Oftentimes, one player will be thinking considerably, and the other player will just be like throwing moves out, and then the player who's playing really fast will blunder, and it will all be worth it, and then you can start playing well. Oh, what is that? Oh, okay, I see. So this is a very interesting tactical idea. Good candidate moves for white. The idea here is that if pawn takes, bishop takes, he probably thought that queen d7 was forced because the bishop was gone. But he's gonna play bishop d7 again. But this is a nice idea. Like sometimes you can do something like this where you temporarily give up a piece and then you trap the queen because there's only one recapture, and letting the knight live is too terrible. But here I think that Vedanta has horribly blundered. I mean, the candidate moves were good. It was good to consider trying something like that, but just not the right time. Okay, so a small trick. Typical cheap shots. King d8 is a pretty sensible move, although it might make it hard to utilize the rook later on. What is this, like, random check game that we're playing? I guess he's gonna sacrifice 2 minor pieces for a rook and 2 pawns, but it'll also help black complete their development and open the position, so very double-edged. I guess he has to just kind of go all in for something like this since he's already down a queen. But after bishop e7, bishop takes h8, queen takes e4, like, we know who's in the driver's seat. Black has 2 bishops and a queen against bishop and 2 rooks. It's just not a shining moment here, and their king is pretty safe. King e8. That's a little bit more passive than I expected. I don't find the king like much safer there than I was thinking maybe he wants to trap the bishop with e5, but I don't know. It's all something of a pipe dream. Now, if black can activate both bishops, then there will be really severe threats against white's king. If I had to make a bet about what kind of checkmate we might see, I'd say maybe like a Boden's mate. Checkmate with 2 bishops. See, this is part of why I thought it was not so prudent to play king e8. Like, if you just play bishop e7, even if they took on e6, it wouldn't be with check. He would have had like a very similar position, but maybe he'd have time to play e5 or something. And just take care of business. Now, white is going to probably double the rooks with significant potential for counterplay. Ooh, what is that? Now he has to play 2 bishops against rook, which is considerably more involved than what he had before, but arguably still better for the black pieces. Yeah, king d8, king d7 is kind of forced because rook e7 is like way too much counterplay. What's going on here? This is a very sudden twist from like completely winning to maybe not winning. Seeing some practical chess from Vedanta. Little tiny threat. Unfortunately, it's not that strong because d5 is now passed. I think black's winning again. White offers draw. Black doesn't care. That's what I like to see. No draws. I almost thought about making no draw offers a rule for our matches, but oh man, they took the draw. This is like so winning. I strongly felt it, and now it's gone. Alright, so we might even go to an Armageddon. Like, if this game's a draw, then for sure it's going to go down to the 3+0, where black has draw odds for winning the match. Alright, coming in hot. It's the same variation that we've already seen. King on e7. Is he still going to play bishop f4 to provoke e5? You know, I might even have played this variation. I think I might have misremembered my own chess game. I think I played this over the board. I do like me a good outpost square on d5. Maybe this is theory, and I'm just like woefully ignorant. Black offers draw. He wants to go to the Armageddon. Crazy. Looks like Vedanta's like scared of losing the match now. If he's offering a draw like that. Or he's just doing it out of like sheer boredom, knowing white won't accept or something like that. Could be a psychology move, but it's kind of dirty if you ask me. There's an interesting move here that I hadn't really considered before. Maybe it's not that interesting, and that's why I didn't consider it. But so this d6 square is kind of tender, right? I was thinking like maybe white could attack it more with like knight b5, but I don't think it's necessarily good. It's just an idea I hadn't really considered. A lot of the time when I reach a position like this, my knight's on b5, and I like wait till they play a6, and then I put it on d6. I think in this specific variation with bishop c5, I'm just going to hypothesize for a second. If you wait, they will play d6 and you won't get your shot, so it's important to get in immediately. All right, so back to the game. And we are going to be doing a post-mortem after this, of course. All right, now he's trying bishop c4, but the b2 pawn is hanging, so what's the deal? Is this some kind of cunning trap? That's always the question when the b2 pawn's hanging. They call it poison pawn. On Chess Kid, there's this video that tells kids like b2 pawn is always poison, so lots of kids just don't understand. They like never want to take the b pawn for like no reason at all. And if they set the board up wrong, wherever the b pawn is, they don't want to take that one either. They just remember that there's something special about it, and they feel superstitious, which is really funny. But I think they could have done a better job explaining it in the video. I don't think it's good to instill a sense of superstition in budding chess players, but that's just me. Maybe my own like myopic perspective is clouding my judgment, and it's better to let people know that sometimes a pawn shouldn't be taken. Here though, it's not that clear whether it should be taken or not, unless I'm just like not calculating and like saying dumb stuff. Now white's taking a really long time to decide, but hold on, maybe I'm behind a move. Oh, okay, so it was pawn takes f6. I'm sorry, I was analyzing so much for black when it's actually white to play. So maybe he's calculating whether or not he ought to defend b2, but I think it's not even a calculation. The main reason I was suspicious about queen b2 when I thought it was black's move is in that situation the knight is hanging, the rook is kind of hanging, the pawn is gone, but it doesn't matter so much. And the issue is that if you play a move like rook b1, like queen c3 is a check and all that, and if you play like knight a4, then queen b4 is check. I'm sorry. So let's say they play queen b2, you play knight a4, then queen b4 is check. But in this position, I think white is maybe just like super overthinking it, and castling is just like a normal good thing to do. You know, you can easily give up the b pawn in a situation like this. I don't think it's so bad. This also looks fair because if they play queen b2, it's not attacking the knight on c3, so similar kind of compensation. It would be like if they play queen b2 and castle, it would be the same as if they castled, played queen b2, and then played knight d5. Same kind of thing. It took him a really long time to play knight d5 though, like such a natural move. Maybe it's because he was looking at bishop takes, knight takes, bishop f2, and wondering if it was kosher or not. And I would wonder the same thing. So it seems like he's maybe committed to taking back with the bishop. Not that clear. I don't think this is tactics. I think black just kind of gave up the option of checking the king under more favorable circumstances here. Like, yeah, there's a capture on e3, but we saw how that turned out last game, right? In the last game, white took back with the pawn, castled, and then had a massive attack on the f-file. Hey, Mahir, welcome. Thanks for dropping in. We were getting into move territory with Vedanta having 3 times as much time as Atharv. I don't know why it's taking so long to play moves like these. I'm also highly suspicious of b4. What is going on here? It's chaos. So he was getting too fancy for himself with this. Like, I think just pawn takes is very natural, unless I missed a tactic, of course. Rook f1 is a good move, though. I guess you can just play moves quickly at this point because like his pieces are well placed. Knight d4 is not in the stars. There's a mate threat. Let's see what black does. Had to defend f7. But now f6 is on pre. Hey Neil, welcome. We're kind of at the tail end of this match here. Freddy's done for. I guess he's going for some cheap shots with queen h3. Oh. Yeah, that was forced anyway because rook f7 was right there. I think white's in the driver's seat even though he has only 27 seconds left. That's a big oof. Rook d6 is pretty strong. I think white could even like pre-move almost like the rest of the moves. It depends, of course, a little bit on what they play, but okay, rook d7 quite tempting because if they have to play, I guess, queen e8. We'll see. He has to choose. Que tension. Yeah, white is definitely crushing. It's like over, but he has 17 seconds, so we have to just wait and see. Can't really be determined. He's just gonna flag, isn't he? It's painful to watch Atharv flag. I think it's his modus operandi. Actually, Coach Luis loves to flag too. Oof. Pre-move the check. And black is victorious. So Vedanta wins the match with 2.5, 1.5. That's the margin by which he lost against Coach Luis. So, yeah, I don't know what happened there, but let's go to the players in the voice channel, and we will analyze the games one by one. So let me just take care of that transition, you guys. Give me 1 second. Hopefully the players will join me in secret. Secret's the name of the channel that we use for this. Alright, where are you at? Howdy. Hey Atharv, can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, great. It's been a long time since I heard you, Atharv. When's the last time I saw you?
I think it was there was a Friday.
Yeah, that's right. It was at yeah, it was at Kings and Queens like 2 years ago. Where are you now? Oh, okay. Yeah, now I'm in Louisiana, so we're all totally dispersed. So let's go one by one. Vedanta, you can hear us, right?
Yeah, I have been to YouTube and I'm watching your stream.
Okay.
If there is no lag, I will be able to see everything.
Sure, sounds good. There'll be probably like a few seconds lag, but I don't mind if we're a couple seconds behind. We'll just go slow. Okay, so we'll start with game one. I wonder why Vedanta's like. Oh, Vedanta just is busy for 1 minute, so we can chat a little bit. You finished your PhD like 6 months ago or something, right? Oh, okay. I thought I remembered it from long back. Cool. What was your thesis topic? I forgot already. Oh, okay. I was guessing during the stream that optimizationguy was a reference to the kind of work that you did. So, I guess it was a good guess. I'm doing some optimization stuff myself these days, but probably of a different sort. More like model optimization. Doing linear approximations for like high order derivatives and things like that. Yeah, it's pretty good. So I'm just playing out the opening a couple moves while we wait for Vedanta. Oh, you're here? Great. So can you guys see the position? Yeah, I definitely. I was thinking it's revenge too, because at the end of the 10+0 segment, I was like, okay, this is maybe a fair score because it was injustice in both games. So bishop c4. Do you guys have any thoughts about the opening at this point? Like, what were you guys posturing for? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought it was okay too. Atharv, what do you think?
I think this is fine. I think only point I thought was before, just before I tested.
Mm-hmm.
They
Like right here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretending to play D5, he stops it for some time.
Mm-hmm. Like after Queen E1, it's on the board though, right? So this is coming with tempo. Sorry, say it again. Oh yeah, yeah. He'll probably come back in a second. So yeah, it was definitely kosher. Like not trying too much. I was wondering if you'd go out for an attack at some point. Like, hmm I don't. I, I wouldn't say it's necessarily the best. Like there's an interesting line where you can just give the D pawn and give them a hard time with F5. You said pawn E5 in this position with bishop on C4, or like before castling. So okay, so castling and instead of Queen E1 E5. Is that what you're saying? Oh, you mean for black or for white? Like here? Mm-hmm. You just play F5 and it's a lockdown, right? Yeah, I think this is kind of the general plan, right? You'll do this like Never-Gelt maneuver where you play King H1, Rook G1, then G4, G5. Yeah, but that's kind of like very ambitious at this point since you guys both had like 6 minutes. So bishop b3. I guess it makes the most sense. It's kind of critical for black that e5 doesn't work against just take the bishop. You know, like black is totally in the driver's seat here. So I think black's equalized after bishop b3. Um, mm-hmm. Yeah, a4 was maybe even a6 is maybe not necessary. I was kind of debating whether or not we should include these moves. So let's say you do something more common sense like King H1, right? I don't think you really need a4 in because like c4 is not on tap. Like you'll just take it, no problem. And if you play d4, like as long as you don't play knight a4, you're good. So you'd play like knight e2. Another thematic move is knight d1. With the idea of going like f2 and supporting the g4 advance, something like that. So I really think a4 was not necessary either, but okay, let's maybe keep it in. Here, I thought instead of knight b4 there were some alternatives. Like, since the queen's not on d1, right, it doesn't control g4. So I was considering something like, you play d4, the knight goes, like, Vedanta, where would you put the knight? Mm-hmm. Yeah, you go knight d1, f2, h3, g5. Yeah. Mahir's complaining about echo. I don't think we have a significant echo though. So sorry, Mahir. Yeah, probably they have two devices or something. Anyway, so maybe you play knight d1, like you're aiming for that maneuver, right? But the idea I had was e5 though. Like I know this looks kind of. You mean like right now, g3? Mm-hmm. Sure, but like in this position, if you play e5, are you going to take the pawn on e5 or play f5? Sure, but I'm not super confident that you can actually just give a killing blow here. Like normally after knight h5, if your queen's on d1, you can play like knight takes e5 because the queen will be hitting.
This position, F5 is really strong because of two reasons. Number one, it locks down the bishop.
Yeah.
And also, it gives a lot of room for rook and start demolishing, and the bishop becomes a bit more active.
What do you think, Atharv? Because I feel like this is a very double-edged
In this position, I would take on e5 because
for white.
I mean the defensive resource for black is kind of rook e8 and knight f8. So
Mm-hmm.
if you have some pressure on f7 in addition to h7, then that's helpful.
So you guys maybe have a low opinion of this e5 move.
Yeah, I would go F5, but I agree with Arthur's.
Okay, so maybe e5 is not so good, but the reason that it occurred to me is that this bishop on c8 needs to get active somehow, right? And the way we should accomplish that is maybe also by locking the center. One of White's ideas, like in the game, e5, if you respond with, well, here you cannot even play d4, but like let's say you had played d4 instead. A counter idea like e5, sometimes you want to put the knight directly on e4. So here you would kind of have to accept this kind of thing. And I'm actually also not sure who's doing well here. Because,
We could go either side of the way in the wheel because if white doesn't go for a quick attack, it gets disastrous.
yeah, you don't have a lot of endgame potential with the pawn on f4, right? Not all the time.
Yeah.
So
Not even good in endgame, so if Arthur went with
I didn't know you could do anything except Scotch Vedanta. I thought you were only a Scotch player. Like, you don't play chess, you play Scotch. So here, c4 was an interesting idea. I just think Atharv, you played too quickly, that's all.
Yeah, I mean, okay. I forgot that after a4 he has bishop f4.
Yeah, that's what I was suggesting. I thought maybe you pre-moved because you assumed these two moves.
Yeah, I was kind of. It's not a pre-move, but it's like in my mind, it's a pre-move.
I thought you would go in for knight c5. This seemed like a very sensible move to me. Just like you want to snap it off and do the same.
Yeah, in this position, there was actually a lot of counterplay for black because of the bishop.
Mm-hmm.
I could take on e4. That's what I thought. Now a5. Now bishop a4. I should take on a5.
Okay. Yeah, I guess they don't have any good bishop moves, so it's...
Yeah, and the rook on a1 is undefended. So
Yeah, I was thinking about this bishop, like maybe discover attack, but there's like nothing when you take it with the queen. So I was looking at like bishop d7 and then queen a1, but this bishop is stunted. You know, you don't have any good moves. If the queen was on g3 and the pawn was on f5, it would be different. You couldn't do all that because it would be bishop h6 with mate. So that's a good idea. I think you could just take the a pawn then.
yeah.
So this,
Yeah, this position seems really bad.
but.
The bishop is hanging in a way.
Oh,
Really. After b5, it could be very strong, and pawns aren't doing anything with black having white having almost zero counterplay.
yeah. Yeah, I think everything is good here. Like, bishop d2 is probably forced to at least give support for the rook, right? But you cannot play b5 here. Just wanted to point that out. I'll play bishop b5. So, it's not like you can just play b5.
Again.
He got kicked? Okay. He'll be back. So,
Play against Neil.
you could. Take a challenge. You guys are, like, within your rating range, right? I haven't checked. Are you within, like... Oh, yeah, so Vedanta was just saying he might want to challenge Neil next. But we were talking about, like, in the... So after queen a5, right? If bishop d2, it's not super clear. You probably have to just back off and enjoy your pawn. Because if you play b5, there's bishop b5.
But bishop d2. Yeah, bishop d2 defends that.
Yeah, I think it's a good move. But, oh, hold on. Here you have queen b6. But you can't even take with the pawn because your own rook is hanging. That's funny. So, yeah, I think it gets a little complicated there. So, anyway, Vedant, why did you not, like, go for the kill once you were up a piece? You...
Kind of to wait here for a reason because material I thought was a bit I thought I was up material. I kind of wanted to go for an end game, but at
Yeah.
Or maybe going for a sacrifice, but then I'm like, nah, let's just wait it out.
Well, I like the end game arising after Queen E4.
Yeah, I got into a really crazy game.
Because,
I think I
see, the end game here would probably be checkmate on H7. Like here is knight G5, and then we want to attack F7 and all that. So I think that this would have been the way to go. But let's look at the next game, because I think from here it was really like lots of blunders, and it just came down to the wire. Were there any critical moments here for you guys?
at the time, I think I thought he was going to die, so I kind of let go of my family.
You're too hopeful. You like let your hand take the wheel, right? Not even.
It's actually funny because I thought I won. Because I saw
Did you celebrate?
like, yes, I won. And then I was like, wait, lost. Wait, what just happened? And
Yeah,
then
yeah. On stream, I was like, "Who even won this game?" Because it was showing 0-0.
no, I was literally on. I didn't even lose bad, like, this bad thing, like, and bullet. This is like the one that's gonna happen.
In real life, sometimes both clocks fall. Have you ever seen a? Yeah, that's why you offered a draw in that one game, right?
Yeah, I was Armageddon because I think I would have been white. Oh no, I would have been white. Oh, that's bad. I would have.
Yeah. You wouldn't even get time odds. We were just going to do like 3-3 with draw odds, so not even a benefit.
It was fun. Like, this game was fun, but then once I lost, I literally started screaming.
So did you guys prepare this line? In the next game, you played this like low and tall variation or something, right?
This is actually called a 4-night.
What? It's called 4 nights. What do you mean 4 nights? I'm checking the Lichess database. It says it's called Cobra variation. All right. I don't know why. If this is Cobra, I think that this is Mongoose. Okay. I think that first time. I think you did a good job considering it's the first time you've seen it. I think you have to kind of go for the kill, right? Because if you play Bishop F4 directly, actually I might. What? What's 100%?
Knight C4. If white does Knight C4, black.
When? You mean like?
Like,
Later in the game?
no, before bishop happened, like in their database, it said after knight goes to if knight goes to C4,
In this position?
that's 100% victory rate.
But it's only 3 games, and they're probably scrubs. I don't know.
Oh yeah, that's.
Yeah. So.
But this, like normally, like this is actually the best, what Armageddon played. But normally people who play this for the first time, they don't even realize.
Mhm.
And I think even Coach Robert, you fell for this trap in a blitz game. And it was I actually have that game in a study.
Okay.
I had 5 out of Syntacon lost, and it was blitz, so it was really nice.
Yeah, I remember I played one really bad game against you, but it wasn't like this line. I'm pretty confident. It was this line? Oh, okay.
Average Syntacon. I could show you the study.
Yeah, sure. Maybe later on.
Where is that? Here. Let me make you a contributor.
Yeah, lately I've been trying a lot of different stuff. Like, I'm not even playing my prep online. I'm just, like, playing so bad. But not always, I guess. Okay. Yeah, we can check it out in a little while. So, I thought this knight maneuver to E3 was so crazy. Like, you went, like, what was it? Like this?
I'm a bit scared because knight was like, oops, I think I won.
It's a good move.
In the second game, he handled it really good. I think I just got lost. I lost all my control and I actually wasn't bad.
So the thing is, the only play that black has is on d5 square. So
Mhm.
just shut it down, then that's it.
Yeah, I mean, there's some other ideas, though.
Bishop, yeah. If it takes with bishop, if it plays bishop takes e3, then I play f takes e3, not bishop.
Yeah, you want to take on F6, right? So it doesn't make sense. You need to take like this.
It looks like a cobra. It kind of looks like a cobra.
If you squint really hard, everything looks like a cobra.
Did you get kicked out again?
Oh, I don't think so. I think he's here. No, he's. So, yeah, I think this should be called Mongoose variation. I think this is a good way to play against it.
It was actually a really crazy game, I think.
I thought bishop c4 was better instead of bishop e2.
Yeah, I think in this position, black is a bit better because of the development.
I don't know because
Then
like,
it becomes it's just running around.
but what about your king? You know, like the
My king is really weak, but I think it's. I think I eventually should have got my king to e7, and then rook e1, rook e8, and then
excuse
rook
me.
to f, and then start putting it back.
I think the only time you could do that was like when you're already kind of committed to an attack, right? Because
Yeah.
well, first of all, I like bishop c4 because we're just gonna put it on d5 and enjoy. But if you play bishop e2 like this, right? Queen b6. This is your first chance to play king e7, right? Like after white plays. So,
Yeah.
but here, like you're being forced at each step. So, I'm looking for a moment where you could do it. Like bishop e3. I guess you maybe have to do it. b5 is a blunder. So you meant here, right? You want to play king e7 here, is that right? Yeah. Now here you're actually threatening b5. So
This position I thought was. I don't know if this is normal, but then I kind of felt like I ran options here and I just wanted to go for a win. So yeah, I knew about this took, but I kind of missed that there was a free pawn on d6. Maybe I should have done rook.
but king e7 also looks good. Like this was your main idea, right?
Yeah, I should have done that. I feel like I played really stupid.
So Atharv, how would you handle this now? Would you play b4?
Yeah, before.
Mm-hmm. And here, I guess only option is like queen c7, I suppose. And
Second game, right?
yes, this is the second game.
So I won this. This I think was a very good game.
Every game is a lucky game. It's good to play chess. So, queen c7. Yeah, I guess white is probably doing okay after like knight b2. So you could probably just castle and.
Yeah, I think in this position, I kind of actually like to do something like rook goes to g8, rook goes to g6, and then other rook goes to g8, and then just destroy every pawn.
But what if he plays bishop f3? He attacks d4. He supports g2. Like it's a nice big plan, but I think it's tough to accomplish. I mean, you could start in with h5, h4, h3, but we'll play g3.
The rapid portion was very slow, I think. The rapid portion took a long time because it was like very flaggy.
You guys were taking like 10 minutes to play the opening in the 10-minute. So this was all crazy. There was another moment here after queen c6. I thought bishop b5 was maybe playable, but you know it's not necessary. So I think this was pretty smooth.
I think Atharv, the mistake he in the second game,
What?
he get the win.
It's okay. He'll come back. So bishop g4 was probably the mistake you're thinking, right?
No, I think that bishop on G. Yeah, once bishop to G, G4 it became really like weird. Yeah, this was what I was thinking. Bishop takes B5 is just completely bad for me.
You get mated, right? I didn't say anything on stream because sometimes people listen, but then there's queen f7. So you,
I was thinking of waiting to trap the queen by rook c8, but then I got queen b6, and then I was thinking maybe then go rook to
So yeah, why not rook c8 here?
so if you play rook c8, I think it's not much. Like if you play rook d8, queen e7 with the same idea. Oh, maybe rook d7 here.
rook c8. Yeah, this is me.
Maybe you could do this.
This was a trap, but I missed rook c6. Yeah.
Yep.
Rook b6 was a nice move. Rook c8 I was thinking about, but then queen goes to d8, d6, rook goes to b6, and then queen goes to
e7.
and it's a pretty position. And I think up a pawn.
I don't know. I don't know if it's drawish. Hold on. Let's go back to that if we're gonna make these bold claims. So you said rook b6 here, right? Why is this drawish?
Actually, this doesn't seem that bad.
Like bishop takes.
I thought rook b6 is just quickly winning. Rook b6 is just quickly winning.
Yeah, I think actually bishop g4 is too hopeful, and it took you a long time to play this.
It's a cheap trap.
Yeah, kind of. It's definitely like that. Maybe instead you could play. You know this.
I don't think we should do b3 because in this, even though you're down material, queen could do anything.
But I mean, he's already much worse after bishop g4, so he has to muddy the waters in time pressure. You know, he has 48 seconds.
The third game, I think, this is off topic, but the third game was really tactical. I'll say.
Yeah, we can look at that one. I think probably bishop g4 was the critical error, so there's not much to see here. Let's go to that third game. Hold on, let me make sure I have it.
I thought
It's tactics time out here. I think bishop e5 is not that good. What do you guys think? Is bishop e5 a good opening choice, or is it kind of just not much?
I don't think you're on the second video. Oh, okay, there's a lag.
Yeah, it's like 5 seconds. So bishop b5, I was not sure about.
It's 20
It's
seconds.
20. All right, it's probably different for different people.
I think you missed some. You confused some tactics, right? So this
Yeah,
tactic work only when the c6 knight is not there.
Yeah, I can show you a line where it does work. One place where you can accomplish it is generally it's in the dragon, like this line of the dragon.
Because of Blitz, I didn't really care, to be honest, in this game. I was like,
You didn't care? Okay.
I found some really crazy tactics, which I want to look. And looking really weird. Oh wow, it's only 19%.
Hold on. What's the
Yeah.
move
So
here?
when the knight is not on c6, then you take on c4.
Yeah.
Yeah,
When
you go here.
It's just a blunder.
You do bishop e5 check, right? And then when they block, you play queen g4. This is an idea.
Yeah. Now bishop e3. Yeah, bishop e3, and now I cannot go. Yeah, that's right. No, knight g4, right away knight g4.
I think maybe there's a little bit of lag. So, I think I played knight g4. Do you see it?
Bishop goes to
I see it now.
Okay, good. But there are some positions where you also like fully sack the queen, but it's usually not when the bishop's giving support because it can always come back on d7. Do you guys know any example like that?
I think I went for a lot of crazy moves because it was Blitz, and we all know how Blitz is.
It's still chess, kind of, but not that much.
No, Blitz is called the, I don't know, like if you see my username on Discord,
Yeah.
so the first thing, bullet, it stands for bullet,
Mhm.
Blitz, the go stands for go, and I think that's it.
You think that's it? There's nothing else. It sounds like you covered all your bases.
I started combining all the chess variants names, and I found this really
You can end up with a really long name that way. Be careful. No one will be able to call you. They'll be like bullets to house a bugle crazy Vedanta. All right. So bishop e7 I think was more critical if you want to convert this one. Like definitely black is winning after bishop e7.
but then here it started getting a bit weird, you could say.
Like after
Win.
So after king e8 definitely it was kind of weird. But like let's say you play bishop e7 on move 16 and then it's bishop h8. After queen e4 or e5, I think that black is totally in the driver's seat.
This game I thought I would have lost. I was about to actually be like screaming. I was literally about to take a pin on screen. Knew this was lost, but then I somehow managed to go for a okay position.
Yeah, but I think it depended a lot on Atharv not playing that actively. Like bishop c6, like yeah, it threatens mate, but it's also a very superficial threat. So probably
I have a bet. The average centipede loss is going to be above 80.
to me a centipon sounds like an arachnid. So I don't even know the meaning of the word a centipon. So if you play bishop h6, I think it's probably just clearly winning. What do you guys think?
Yeah. Yeah, this game was really, I don't know what to call it. I'll say like crazy. Yeah, I thought you kind of blundered after,
Chess is always crazy though.
because I thought of after F3, king there, and I thought it would have been position.
Vedant, why are you like doing computer analysis in the middle of the game?
No, I'm just checking the average centipede.
Okay, but it doesn't matter. Like it's better to just analyze with a person and see what you can see instead of just checking that.
Yeah, I was right. It's above 80. No, it's 62.
But that doesn't mean anything, right? Like it's just a number.
No, it means that how bad you play. Like, I think 100 is a full point.
Sure, but like I think it's too easy. Like if you click on the computer analysis and you just read all that, it gives you a different feeling about the game from just analyzing it.
I agree.
No, but if you blunder a queen and then like centipede lost, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that also makes no sense.
This game I thought my
Yeah, this game.
okay. Not this position.
Send upon loss is heavily skewed by individual moves. It's like a pretty poor statistic.
Yeah, I agree.
Honestly, it kind of annoys me when chess players try to use statistics because they basically have no idea what they're doing, and it makes a very skewed idea of chess. It's just too crazy. So king f7 was a blunder, and here I thought you like completely lost the advantage, but it's still a contest, right? I mean, if you're looking at the center pawn loss, it says like plus 1.4 and all that. Uh, it's not really about the number though. Like you can just tell from the character of the position. Like two bishops against rook, it's not clear who should win here. Um, I think to convert, maybe rook e1 is more precise. You just want to cut the king off.
Is he doing?
Yeah.
It's completely winning. Well, not completely. So like it was 2 point something. But when you like see the game, it feels like a complete block because it was a complete block for a minute.
The computer is sometimes extremely foolish because of the way that it makes evaluations. But that's normal. Like all computer models fail it in some kind of territory, unless you have a very, very well-behaved situation. So after rook e1, maybe black is in deep trouble because you just want to activate your king. I think this is probably like the winning idea. But I thought there was a point here where you were actually winning again. I thought you were winning actually when he offered the draw. Like in this situation where you have the pass pawn now, I think this is winning for black.
For
How do I turn off these arrows and stuff? Like,
I thought it was like okay. I kind of wanted to draw. I actually wanted to go into Armageddon the first time I ever have. It'd be actually epic.
that would have been interesting.
I just shut up now that we see the results.
It doesn't matter. It's just a.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. The last game was I kind of felt like I took revenge for the first game.
It was all revenge. Let's check it.
Realized I got into so much pressure once I thought it was up upon, I thought it was gonna be a healthy lead until I started saying, "Oops, I'm into a bad position." Then later, I'm just getting lost.
All right. So I'm going to our repeat theoretical position. So this time you played d6, and that was different from last time, right? Actually, did you play d6 in both games? No, you did, right? So bishop c4 was new. So I thought bishop c4 was pretty sensible on move 12 in the last game.
It's a huge lag.
Yeah, it's okay. It's coming up. So
It was actually the same opening. The whole game was actually the same opening.
Yeah, yeah, no, I said, yeah, bishop c4 was different.
mhm.
Yeah. Well, bishop c4.
I thought it made a lot of sense to just lock down on d5.
Was
Mhm.
different.
Maybe should you first take on f6? Like, does it matter?
I had no clue what to do here. I thought, oops, I'm kind of in a bad position.
The, there's a small tactic if they play queen b2. Like, let's say you play bishop f6 and queen b2. You can win an extra pawn. As
Yeah.
well, you win a pawn back, and I think it's just advantageous.
He was just saying who won the game, and I say I won. He 2.5, and he's like LOL.
Yeah, Luis is like LOL about everything. But that's good. Let him enjoy his life. So, in this position, I think knight e5 followed by knight d5. Like, white is just crushing here. So, I think bishop f6 might have been like a cunning in-between move after queen b6.
I actually don't think so.
Yeah, that's what I would do.
Yeah, I think that would have been good. But here, isn't this a chance for black to kind of like get away from the bishop f6 idea? Or
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure I like the game. But like there are really strong variations if opponent doesn't go for NB5. But once they go for NB5, it gets into a really
when your opponent blunders, there's always a strong continuation.
yeah. I don't actually analyze this game.
I thought about knight b5 here, but I kind of see now it's just a clear blunder. Maybe I was thinking of a different position with knight b5 during the game, but here it's just like it's just not good. Like the knight's hanging.
Yeah.
Maybe there's another spot that I just wasn't thinking. Oh yeah, here actually knight b4. I'm sorry, knight b5. I was maybe thinking. But I think it's probably not much. Oh, maybe I was thinking takes, and then knight b5.
Yeah, this was too complicated at this point.
Yeah, it's quite complicated. The hold on. So this idea with knight b5, I'm not sure how black should react because knight d6 is definitely happening, but there's lots of ways to follow.
Not the big blunder. I think I shouldn't have been basically.
Oh, but okay, with knight d5, knight d4.
Knight d4. Okay. And what if I play knight d5? Oh, I'm sorry. The king's on f8. I was thinking about knight c7 fork. Sorry. My bad. So it's pretty much nothing after knight d4. Yeah. So we can move on from there. But bishop f6 is probably nevertheless strong. Anyway, so bishop c4, bishop e6, knight d5. This is all interesting. I think queen a5 was a mistake. What do you guys think about that? On move 14.
Yeah, queen f5
I don't know, I think the
there is nothing. You just
oh wow, this is actually really funny.
What?
The trends that the computer looked at. Like I just wanted to see.
Don't look at the computer when we're analyzing Vedant. I don't want to hear about it.
Shows me what I should have done.
Oh, okay.
And did in the whole game. Then like this is what it was queen b6 and the computer says the best move is bishop e6, which now that I look about it, I feel like this is just completely like the best move.
I mean, it's logical, right? Because white is controlling d5 stronger than anything in life, and if you put your queen on b6, they can attack it pretty easily. So I think it's sensible. But like, what about this later point, like queen a5? Maybe you should have instead just played queen d8 instead of giving this free.
queen d8 defense everything.
Yeah, I think this is probably stronger. So after queen a5, this is where you're starting to lose the thread. And after bishop e3 here, I thought b4 was too complicated, but you're kind of in time pressure, right, Atharv? I think that's probably just why you played b4.
Yeah, this game, if you look at it, like
Before why is it complicated? It just forks, right?
Well, if you just take on e3, you get the same kind of position like in the last game with no complication. But after b4, bishop f2 is counterplay.
I think the position reminded me of the Sveshnikov, and the reason why we're playing the Sveshnikov.
It's because you played me too many times. I like wrecked you in Sveshnikov like 10 times in a row.
Yeah, I like the Sveshnikov. I think it's maybe like really good for high rate players, but not for me.
Yeah, I think it's also better for higher rated players and not for me. So like rook f.
Also, in these positions, I like the d5 outpost and white is just too strong. I mean, it's not.
It's kind of easy to play, right?
Yeah, it's very easy to play for white. I always like this position. Even when I did not know any theory, I would have. So, for example, in the opening, if you had gone for something like d6 instead of bishop c5, I would have.
I'm looking for it so I can show you.
I didn't play it the best.
So
I would have converted into proper Sveshnikov by playing bishop f4 and then bishop g5.
Yeah.
yeah, this is a good variation. This was like famous from Kasparov's time, right?
Yes. I've seen Kasparov's games.
Yeah.
I saw them yesterday.
He has some good analysis.
D6,
Yeah, that was a good call on your part. I feel like that's definitely the kind of thing to look at before this match. Vedant, did you prepare for the match, or did you just look at the average center pawn loss for all your games?
So here bishop, this is the I prepared.
I didn't know what to expect. I look at a bit of his games, and like when I thought he played the Scots, and
You think everyone plays the Scotch? Vedant's like, okay, Scotch, no chess, just Scotch, all the time.
those are the best days playing the Scotch.
You're gonna look back on those days, like the old times when the Scotch was playable. See, so I just jumped to the end of the game. Like this final position is like totally winning for white, is it not? But it was just hard to accomplish it.
I was getting completely crushed. I think at the last move, instead of rook takes pawn, I should just took the rook and went for it.
The last move was better. Yeah, you can take the rook, but before this move, I think it was like plus 10 or something. Yeah, it's like
Yeah, it was really bad. It was probably like plus, I don't know, 20. Because that was completely losing.
You just don't have a move. Like if white plays, for example, like g3 or rook f6, a4, anything, yeah. Like maybe even bishop b5, because f7 is not that tender now, so we could maybe just threaten them badly with bishop b5.
This game was bad. I'd say this game was bad for like he played really good, but I think the time became tough.
Yeah, absolutely. It was just time. So Atharv, why do you think you were thinking so long in some positions? Like, what were you thinking about?
So it takes me a lot of time to calculate how many attackers are there and how many defenders.
Yeah, you don't use your fingers, do you? It's like 1, 2.
I actually do like rook takes f7, knight takes f7, rook takes f7,
Mhm.
takes f7. So I have to do
Yeah.
I do the same thing. Yeah, I mean you can count them, but you have to just know when counting doesn't help.
because queen is in front of bishop, right? So counting doesn't work.
Yeah. So
Game was bad. I'll say from this is what I think, but I think this game I don't know what to say about this game. You know those games are in the morning and you're like,
oh yeah, I definitely know. For,
what you play? Like,
see, for like Coach Luis and probably Atharv and also myself, I think every game is like an early morning game. we're all like, oh my god, we're like done with school and so busy.
still half awake and you're like, what should I play? What should I play? And then your worst move.
Usually I just don't play because I feel really sad when I blunder. I'm just like I'll just stop now. Like I think about playing and then I imagine all the bad moves I'm about to make and I'm like, you know what? Maybe another day. Today I'll do something like read a book where I can't fail. Yeah, so I think to get around having the trouble counting, you just have to like really do it a lot because I don't really count myself. I do the like he goes there, I do this because I'm always on high alert for in between moves. And if you count, you're just not going to notice them.
A challenge?
Yeah.
Like, it's not technically a fan battle, but I think the best challenge would be Coach Luis versus Coach Robert.
And I commentate the whole match by myself.
I commentate.
Oh my god.
You guys will scream.
I mean, that'd be funny. I mean, maybe we could one day, but I've played Luis so many times. I wonder if Luis is in the chat to give comment. But like Luis and I have probably played like more than 50 times.
Like, my idea is that like two commentators, one is me, and we do like it will be fun, and we all like I don't know I think it was called the challenge the coach, where like two commentators.
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
you both like just you yourself and you guys don't listen, and while we commentate and you say that's an interesting commentation, because we're just players.
Yeah, I mean, you guys might be saying all kinds of crazy stuff if we play. There was one time when I was playing Luis. Atharv, do you remember Luis? He was at Rutgers Chess.
I have played against him once in an over the board.
Yeah, it was a close game, right?
So he was initially pressing in the opening,
Mhm.
then it went equal. There were a lot of tactics, and then he offered a draw, and I had like 5 seconds.
I remember. Yeah, we talked about that game many times actually. But there was one time when we were both at Kings and Queens early because we were both working there at the time, and so we were like, okay, let's play one game, but we're not going to play a crazy game. We're just going to play something so we can like chat and enjoy and so on. So we start playing. 7 moves later, we have a poison pawn Najdorf on the board, and we're both sitting like this, like right before class, like squeezing our heads with this crazy position. We're like, why do we always do this to ourselves? So I imagine like Vedanta trying to give comment. We have a position where like 10 pieces are hanging. He's like, oh, well, maybe they could take the rook, or maybe they could take the bishop, or maybe they could take the knight.
That happened to me like a lot of times. I'm thinking, I'll just go for a nice game, and then I realize that the whole game has gone crazy.
I have no nice games. I just have heart attack games all the time. All right, I think this is probably a good place to break off. Interesting match. I think Atharv's main problem was the clock, not Vedanta. Vedanta was very accommodating, but the clock was against him.
Yeah.
So,
Let's do another fan battle like next week.
yeah, maybe Neil will jump in. I think he volunteered. I haven't checked the Discord, but we could set something up.
He did.
Okay, that sounds good.
I don't know.
All right,
Go to Leeds. That's a good match.
it might be. All right, so thanks for coming, guys. I think we'll just wrap it up here and close the stream. All right.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I'll see you guys another time on the fan battle. Maybe with different matchups. All right, see ya.
Okay.
Thanks everyone for tuning in.